The internet is somehow simultaneously humanity's greatest invention as well as its biggest mistake. Now, instead of relying on the Daily Mail to be thrown onto your porch fresh off the press, breaking news like the fact that I'm not wearing pants can be delivered to citizens sometimes minutes after an event occurred on the other side of the world. Newspaper companies must be struggling to survive because when I worked at a little grocer, the only people who would buy the physical paper were the old Donnies who would come in and buy that and maybe a hot pie for their breakfast, maybe dropping a little racist remark or two on the way. News sites have largely replaced physical papers, with even my own grandparents preferring them, sometimes scrolling on Apple News for literal hours on the couch, while still ridiculing me for spending too much time on my games. Perhaps news sites are mostly a one-to-one replica of the old physical form of paper, a smooth transition from analog to digital. You've got your headlines, top stories, and then a bunch of other smaller stories, all written by the same journalist who would have once been hired to write for the physical paper. But what if there was a place where people got their news that wasn't reliable whatsoever? A place that wasn't ever intended to be an actual news site? A place where everyone, no matter age or qualification, can post whatever they want and masquerade it as news fresh off the press? Facebook has evolved from what was once a site where people would simply post updates about their lives. It was the ultimate social platform, providing a bridge between people who knew of each other but didn't like one another enough to actually arrange a meetup. I created a Facebook account solely so I could get messages from my older relatives, and I'll look on the comments of a post that my mum made and there will be hundreds of people who I've never met before claiming to have been there at my birth. There are also a bunch of these messages that could be taken as kindness or a threat. Either way, I'm going to proceed with caution. I may not know most of these people, but clearly most of them have had some sort of impact in my life. So it's pretty cool to have one place that acts as a sort of compendium to all the people who have influenced me, consciously or not. And I'm not ashamed to admit it, but apparently I have mad game with the elderly ladies. And between you and me, jokes aside, I believe that when used as a purely social platform, Facebook has provided older people with their own platform to keep in contact and participate in social media, just like the younger generations. But, as you may have already surmised, that's not the only thing Facebook is used for. No, I would go out on a limb and say that people posting wholesome life updates make up only a fraction of the total traffic on the app. I've already done a video on short form content and how the introduction of that form of media has tanked the attention span of the people who constantly view it. However, in that video I was mainly focusing on apps where most of the user base are teens or young adults, like TikTok and Instagram Reels. One of my main points in that video was that the attention span of the younger generation must be abysmal compared to that of the boomers. But stupidly, I had hardly even stopped and taken the time to consider the fact that Facebook can be just as bad, and I'd argue worse.
Please subscribe.
Facebook has a feature where if you really like a certain post, you can actually repost it onto your own feed, which will make it appear on the feeds of everyone who follows you. Great for spreading news around quickly, but this feature allows the spread of misinformation and biased news sources to be spread faster than what was ever possible before. With one simple click, someone can read the headline of something that claims something crazy and force it to fester its way onto the For You page of all the friends and family members that follow them, automatically introducing them as unwilling witnesses to whatever they've decided to repost. Now, more than ever, is propaganda able to spread to an entire population within minutes. This power can also be used for good, I guess, but for some reason I don't see all of the banshee conspiracy theorists just dropping their efforts and giving up trying to convert others to join their side of ringworms and tinfoil hats. Thinking back to COVID, when the possibility of a vaccine finally being created, floods and floods of anti-vaccine propaganda swept through online spaces. It may have been different for others, but I remember that the only place where any of the anti-vax claims were taken seriously was Facebook. The only anti-vax content that you can find on other platforms were posts of people mercilessly ridiculing the idea. This issue hits quite close to home for me. A little backstory, my family as well as my mum's parents were actually in Bulgaria of all places when the COVID outbreak started. Being in a completely unfamiliar place and having a world-rocking pandemic appear at once created a very difficult environment for my parents and I. When we were finally escorted out of Bulgaria by several men in hazmat suits, like we were infected with some rabid zombie virus, we could only get a flight into London. We then stayed in a little farm village like 4 hours outside of London for another month. That place genuinely felt like a liminal space. I would go on runs across endless fields that had been meticulously ploughed, and yet there would be no one in sight. Looking back on the memories of that time, they're all coated in this weird fog of like unfamiliarity and fear, kind of like trying to recall a dream that I had. Naturally, when we finally got back to Australia and a vaccine was introduced, my Australian family as well as my huge New Zealand family were more than happy to get a quick jab for the possibility of ending this god-awful pandemic. Well, everyone in my family except for one who will remain unnamed. However, this one family member, who I may add spent their entire isolation surfing on the Australian beaches that they lived on, thought it was a breach of their rights for the government to ask them to get the jab. They claimed that the vaccine contained toxic substances and that it actually caused diseases. They said a lot of things, with their evidence for all of their claims always being some random Facebook article. No lie, midway through an argument with anyone in my family who challenged their views, they would pull out their phone and shove it in your face, and they would always have this smug gotcha face like, every single time it would be a Facebook article with bright colors and big red letters saying something like 100,000 people have just died after receiving the COVID vaccine. All of this skepticism sprouted from a specific way of thinking: don't trust the government. Look, I 100% agree that skepticism to everything, including the government, is absolutely a right that everyone should have and practice, but there are limits. During the outbreak, the Australian government introduced an app which would track your location. Once someone was diagnosed with COVID, it would alert all people that came within a certain radius of them that they had to isolate and get tested. Really, it was just a way for the government to try and minimize the spread during the early times of the outbreak. But the fact that the app asked for your location set off the alarms of all the anti-government fiends. In their heads, this was just a ploy, a sneaky way for the government to hone in and track every little thing we do in our day-to-day lives. Mate, you already post every single detail of your life online. I don't think ScoMo was giving a piss about the nitty-gritty details like when you went to Woolies on a Tuesday morning. Also, if the government really did want to know that for some reason, I don't reckon they'd be stumped if you didn't want to download some random app. They'd find out. In the past, these types of people would have been laughed at and shunned by those around them until they either kept all of their fantasies to themselves or they just changed their mind. But with the introduction of Facebook, even if no one in their real lives can stand them, there's always anti-vax mums. Anti-vax, anti-government, and other groups like that are clearly and outwardly malicious. They aren't trying to hide what they are, they're confrontational and aren't afraid to admit it. But there's another form of popular content spreading through Facebook which I would argue is just as, if not more malicious. This content takes advantage of the kindness and sympathy of unsuspected old people who know no better. AI art has seeped its way onto the platform, invading the For You pages of everyone's grandparents, pulling at their heartstrings and fishing out a repost. Some of the most common motifs of these AI pictures are the ones where a supposed 200-year-old baked their own cake with peach cream and filling. The comments are full of birthday wishes sent by kind old people who are none the wiser to the fact that they are being taken advantage of for the sake of reposts and likes. My granddad posts on Facebook literally hundreds of times per day. My grandma had to block him because of it. And none of the posts are even of him or his family, they're just reposts of random ass things. He went through this phase where all he would post was AI generated boats. Now it's always either flowers or birds, and none of them are real. None of us have the heart to tell him either. When I visited them the other week, he came out of his room all somber. After I asked him what's wrong, he quietly goes, "King Charles is dead." To which we ask him for proof, and he shows us this clearly fake image of King Charles lying in a coffin with Queen Elizabeth standing over him and crying. I'm not sure how he didn't catch that, but at that moment I had the idea for this video. I know the older generation likes to bag on us a lot about how addicted we are to our phones and those damn Nintendos, but in reality, they are both addicted and completely fooled by their machines. They sit on the couches for hours, mindlessly consuming mechanically curated images and headlines like it was nutrients, believing anything they're shown as if it were gospel. As it stands, Facebook is a right wreck. A cesspool of misinformation serving as a portal which allows conspiracies to spread faster than I can run. Something needs to be done. For Facebook to restore any of its fleeting integrity, they need to put in some crazy measures to revert the platform back to what it was always meant to be. A wholesome space where people could post updates about their life to friends and family. I really hope you enjoyed. I'm 117 years old and I made this video with peach cream and filling. I've been making videos since I was 5 years old. Bye bye.